I used to think that reading was just there to, well, consume knowledge. You know, the kind that you are forced to do at school and then you hate the sight of books for the remainder of the year. But it turns out that books do more than just that. And yeah, hi, I'm Yvette, I'm a neuroscientist, and for the past couple of years I have been rediscovering my love for reading just for leisure. And now that I am in this brain rewiring journey, well, I am realizing that I was rewiring my brain all along. And if, like me, you also need an extra push to pick up one of these, well, here are 5 neuroscience-backed reasons, and well, if you stick to the end, the last one is the reason why books can actually change your life. Writing is only a few thousand years old, and that's a problem because evolution moves a lot slower than that. And this is a problem because there was never enough time to evolve a part of the brain just for reading. We've had brains wired for spoken language for hundreds of thousands of years. But the written form only happened yesterday in evolutionary terms. So, by rights, you shouldn't be able to read, well, the sentence at all. So, why can you after all? And, well, this is because the brain is the coolest organ. And that's a little neat trick. When you learn to read, it repurposes a patch of the visual cortex. And on its own, with no genetic instruction or manual, it rebuilds that patch into a specialist for written words. And this was mapped in, well, this paper over here. And they called it the visual word form area. And think about it. This is why you don't sound out elephant letter by letter, but you recognize the whole shape of the word in about, well, I think 200 milliseconds, which is faster than you can blink. Because in simple terms, your brain wanted to read so badly that it borrowed from one of its oldest jobs, and that is to recognize objects and faces. And it retooled part of it for the alphabet. And this physical rewiring of the visual cortex results in the rewiring of other parts of the brain, to accompany the skill, of course. For example, reading also thickens the white matter highway connecting the language parts of the brain. And interestingly, this physical rewiring was also measured in adults who learned to read as adults. Which reminds us that, well, it is, well, never too late to start. So, go on, find a book. It won't bite you, promise. But building the hardware is only half of it, because once the machine is running, it starts doing something that feels almost impossible. But read this word. Kick. Did your leg move? Well, probably no, right? But the part of your brain that would kick just switched anyway. And this is because your brain didn't fully get the note that this was only a word and not an action. When researchers had people read action words like lick, pick, kick, the matching parts of the motor cortex lit up. And these were traced to the face, the hand, or the leg, depending on the word. So, for example, if you read cinnamon, then your scent region's there. So, if you're reading a book and you're following a character, grabbing a handle, or walking into a room, and then your brain quietly tracks the grasp and the movement as if you were doing it. So, in a way, for your brain, you are not just reading a story, but rather you are simulating it. And this does not stop at action words. When you read fiction, you light up the same network you use to figure out what real people think and feel. So a novel is like a flight simulator for other people's internal worlds. And this was shown scientifically that fiction gives a small, real, replicated boost to social understanding. So, in other words, reading helps you understand complex feelings and gives you words for them. Because remember, just because you cannot name something does not mean that you are not feeling it. Well, it just means that you are not processing it. And in a way, well, that is the basis of therapy, to make you aware of certain patterns and give you tools to understand your world. And interestingly, books can help with this. And no, here, please don't take me sideways. Books are not a replacement for therapy, but they can be used as a tool. So reading rebuilds your brain and rewires how you understand people. But the next one will touch on your lifespan. Let me tell you this. 3,500 people were monitored for 12 years. And at the end, the readers kept showing up alive. And what do I mean by this? So, in this study from 2016, book readers had about 20% lower risk of dying over the period of the study. So, roughly almost 2 years survival advantage over non-readers. And it seems that the more that was read, the more benefits were observed. And this was specifically to books, not newspapers or magazines. And the effect ran partly through cognition. But yeah, remember, this is an association study and not proof that reading causes a longer lifespan. While the authors account for the obvious differences between readers and non-readers, such as age and sex, well, they cannot account for everything, like for example other habits. But yeah, thought it's quite interesting and I wanted to share it. But anyway, if reading does all of this, why does it feel almost impossible to just sit with a book? So you're watching this on the exact device that makes reading a book hard to do. And I want you to know I'm not standing above any of this, because I spent many years weaseling my way out of reading a single actual book. I did other forms of reading, like reading scientific papers. And I always thought that this was enough. I feel sad about it, because this nasty habit makes you very two-dimensional, at least I find for me. But hey, I was tired and the screen was always the easier thing. And watching another episode of The Office was always easier than finding the focus to sit and read a book. Then I think around 2021, I started reading books again. And I feel that this habit was the process that led me to this journey of mine. And actually, even if you choose the screen for the good, for example, to read blogs and articles, it was shown across more than 170,000 readers, comprehension was better on paper than on screens. And let me tell you a secret. The gap isn't shrinking as we're getting more digital. And this idea was highlighted while I was reading, this book, which is called Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. And that even if you use screens to read, the way we read on screens, like skimming, scanning, hopping between fragments, this trains the brain out of the slow, deep reading that books require. And if you do not think this is an important skill to keep, well, I have to steer you to another book, which is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari, where he identified the ability to focus and hold power over your brain as one of the biggest skill sets that will be in demand in the near future. And now, if you have cleared out your schedule and started already reading books, but you know that a year from now, the book that you're actually reading, you would have completely forgotten about it, well, for you, I have made a free brain rewiring reading journal. It is built to help you capture the one core message of every book you read, and then helps you to reflect on how you can implement it in your daily life. And the link is somewhere down here in the description if you want it. In the first point of this video, we explored how the brain physically rewires with reading. However, as we touched on briefly in the second point of this video, a book carries a perspective and possibly a new way of thinking. So they have old ideas, but they are maybe new to you. And a new perspective is a thought you could not have produced on your own. Think about why, that matters. Remember how a novel simulates other minds. This is the same thing turned inward. Sometimes a stranger who never met you puts words to your exact inner experience. And this sometimes it is done better than you could have ever done yourself. And this is why the right book can make you feel suddenly, less alone. You've probably heard you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And a screen can be one of those 5. And knowing that the algorithm is feeding you the same information in different formats, or just watching reality TV and solidifying the drama circuits in your brain and producing more of it in your actual life. Or you can have one of those 5 people and you choose a book. And now don't get me wrong, not every book is worth reading, and not every book will expand your mind and perspective on life. And a book nowadays can be pushed on you by an algorithm. But I think it is much easier to be stuck in a loop with a screen rather than a book, because books have so much friction. You have to turn pages, you have to find another one, you have to buy them, or at least wait for them to be shipped. And I find that with books, it is easier to digest complex ideas, because when you have fully devoted your time to just reading, your brain is fully committed, right? So if you do anything this week, do this. Go to a small bookshop in your area and physically go through their shelves and buy a book that you like. And then when you go home, you have to read it. Don't put it on a shelf, Because a book is a good way how you let a new perspective and a new voice in your top 5 inner circle. And as we've learned, this is shaping who you are. So the idea for this video started while I was reading Fahrenheit 451. And if you get the audiobook, well, you get Pam Badgley reading it, which I find is really fitting the whole vibe of the book. But anyway, in this book, firemen don't put out fires, but actually they start them by burning books. And without spoiling the book, while reading it, it well horrified me. Because there are so many parallels between this dystopian world and ours. Because, you don't need to burn books in order not to read them. And to be honest, seeing the statistics, there are plenty of us that never touch a book in a whole year. So yeah, think about it. And if you still don't believe that words hold power over you, well, then you should watch this video next, where I talk about how negative self-talk can shape your identity. And with this, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!